Hi there. Welcome to Pisay Talks and Webinars, a forum series being hosted by Philippine Science High School National Alumni Association, featuring alumni of Philippine Science High School in various disciplines who will share the work that they do and how they are able to increase the awareness on science and technology to society at large. I'm Chippy Buenafed, batch 1997, main campus, and I will be your host for this episode entitled Thou Stands Above with Thy Thoughts That Lift, Pisay Alumni in Public Governance. And we have a pretty loaded lineup for our episode today. Our first guest, Carlo Nograles, is the Cabinet Secretary under the Office of the President of the Philippines and currently the co-chair of the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases. Secretary Carlo is a graduate of Main Campus, batch 1993. Sec Carlo, welcome.
Thank you, Chippy, at magandang araw sa lahat ng nanonood at nakikinig ngayon, lalong-lalo na sa mga kasamahan ko dito sa panel.
Okay, thank you. Our next guest, Francis Garcia, is the current mayor of Balanga, Bataan. Mayor Francis is a graduate of Main Campus, batch 1992. Mayor Francis, welcome.
Magandang hapon po sa inyo lahat.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we have J.R. Coro. Okay, he is the Vice Mayor of Del Carmen in the island of Siargao. Vice Mayor J.R. is a graduate of Main Campus, batch 1993. Vice Mayor J.R., welcome.
Good day to everyone. Marajaw na adlaw from Del Carmen, Siargao, the 2019 #1 island in the world by Condé Nast.
Great. And rounding up our powerhouse guests for today, we have Attorney Barry Gutierrez. He is the legal advisor and spokesperson of the Office of the Vice President. Attorney Barry is a graduate of Main Campus, batch 1990. Attorney Barry, welcome.
Thank you, Chippy. Magandang araw sa lahat ng ating tagapakinig. Magandang araw sa lahat ng aking kasama sa panel at siyempre, mga kapwa Pisay Alumni na sumusubaybay sa atin.
Okay, let's begin. Secretary Carlo, we know that you've been having quite a challenging time nowadays with the COVID-19 situation. But maybe we'd like to know more a little bit about the Carlo Nograles behind what we see on TV or hear in the news. What's your typical day look like for you? Like maybe pre-pandemic, if you will.
Pre-pandemic, wala akong typical day. Actually, ang typical day ko is a non-typical day. Kasi the schedule is really, pag dyan sa cabinet office namin, wala kang really fixed schedule. As much as possible, you try to fix it as much as you can. So siguro sabihin natin, ang average day would consist of sa morning, you get to answer some interviews, whether radio or TV. Then Mondays and Fridays, usually, if my schedule allows, I would appear sa PTV morning show.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd be back in the office after that. And then it would be a series of meetings, puro meeting yan. And then hanggang gabi. And then that's somewhat of an average typical day. Pero in between all of those types of days, you get to do meetings outside the office a lot. So mga regional visits, you go to the provinces, utusan ka ni Pangulo to attend some of the events for him. And then every month, meron kaming mga cabinet cluster meetings. So we have 6 clusters sa cabinet, and I attend all of those cluster meetings. Then we have cabinet meetings pa, the big cabinet meetings once every month. And then before the cabinet meeting, meron kaming, to prepare for the cabinet meeting, meron kaming cabinet assistance system meeting. So yun, basically. So it's a lot of meetings, whether in the office or outside the office. Now na COVID, actually mas efficient na nga ngayon kasi everything's in Zoom. So with the Zoom, or all of these other apps, Google Meets or Microsoft Teams, all of these apps, you can jump from one meeting to the next. So during this COVID time, like kanina, I had a meeting with the Zero Hunger Task Force, and then I had to leave the meeting to attend the launching of the Enhanced Nutriban, then come back to my Zero Hunger Task Force meeting. So, mas efficient. Before kasi you'd have to go physically to the place, and then you'd have to say no to some of those other meetings na mag-conflict sa schedule. Now, you can do 2 meetings in the same time frame na sabi mo 9 to 12. So, I believe it's more efficient.
Okay. But do you still have time, let's say, for some recreation, maybe some sports, hanging out with family and friends?
Dati at ngayon, wala. Sports. So it's mostly, if I have free time, it's with family. It's really devoted to family. Whatever time I have before was with family. Now, because we work from home mostly, at least your family's just in the next room, diba? So even now they have school, so they go to class, they come for lunch, we see each other, or they see me working here, and then they go back to school. So it's pretty cool that way na we're physically present with each other naman while we're all doing different things.
Okay, let me go to Mayor Francis now. No? Mayor Francis, being a chief executive of a local government unit is also not an easy feat, I surmise. How has it been so far in Balanga in these past few months?
Yes, thank you, Chippy. Actually, even before the pandemic, being a local chief executive is already a very challenging job, but also a very fulfilling job. Of course, all government work is like that. But now with the pandemic, it's become even more challenging, especially now with lives at stake, literally, every day. But the good thing is, with the cooperation and help from everyone, of course, starting from the national government, kay President Duterte, kay Vice President, sa lahat po ng ating national agencies, of course, kay Sec Carlo, and sa IATF. Kasama na po dyan yung SAP, Social Amelioration Program, yung Bayanihan Law, yung Bayanihan Fund, and then down to, of course, all the governors, and then down to all the barangay officials, and of course, city department heads. Kapag nagtutulungan po, ay ang laki po ang nagagawa. So here we have a unified province, we have a unified city, so that helps a lot. Early on, during March, and I'd like to thank, of course, the IATF for the lockdown that was instituted in March. Kasi doon pa lang talagang pa-spread na yung COVID, no? Even in our city and province, meron kaming na-affected. Even in our city hall, meron pong na-affected. But because of the lockdown, na-minimize po yung effect and na-control po. And so the challenge now is with the ngayong GCQ and MGCQ na, continuing po yung challenge until, of course, hopefully mag-end po itong pandemic with probably a vaccine. So that's what we are hoping for. We're just all trying to help each other. And as a chief executive, I think that's what you can do. Really rally everyone, make sure everyone helps out, make sure everyone has the tools to be able to do their jobs. So that's, and it helps being from Pisay kasi with all the of course, lessons, being logical about everything, cause and effect. You try to find really the best solutions in all the different fields, health, engineering, of course, knowledge about computers. It really helps in being a chief executive.
And how has been perhaps your usual free time? Are you still able to do basketball or any other sport or any other recreation activity nowadays?
Lately, basketball not as much. So actually, in the last few years, not as much na rin. So miss ko nga yung high school days, yung basketball days natin ng high school where You can just run all the time, the whole game, hindi napapagod. Of course, miss na miss po natin yun.
Yeah. Anyway, for those of you who are tuned in right now, I mean, Mayor Francis actually plays basketball for his batch because I normally see him along with his batchmates in the inter-batch basketball we normally have on campus, right? So don't let his looks deceive you guys, okay? I mean, he plays. Okay, so that's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, let's go to Vice Mayor JR. No? Siargao, very popular for tourism. And definitely during the current pandemic, tourism has been well, severely impacted. Maybe could you give us some insight on how your community has been coping so far?
Again, pleasant day to everyone, GP, and to all the kasama natin dito sa panel. Yes, definitely ang tourism, malaki talaga yung impact nitong COVID because of mobility and tourist-driven economy ang Siargao. We shifted from farming to fishing. So anong nangyari, right after we realized the impact of mobility, we immediately encouraged our people to go back to farming and fishing. So nagkaroon ng parang back to the roots program. The lockdown, thanks to the IATF, immediate yung response, we were able to manage yung movement ng tao. So na-manage yung spread. As a geographically isolated and disadvantaged area, which most of our island communities are, nandun din yung tourism. Importante yung yung control ng spread. Kasi in most of our tourism areas, since it's tourism driven, yung ating health systems are not that strong. So kailangan i-manage mo yung possible spread by focusing on locals first. So ganun yung nangyari, and because of what we saw na opportunities din na nakikita na yung mga locals bumabalik sa farming and fishing, na-address natin yung food security. And a lot of the rural areas were able to focus on that. Kaya medyo lessen yung impact in terms of food security kahit yung income bumababa. At the same time, because you're rural, you're not that big, you can be innovative in addressing other sectoral issues. At least in our side, nag-launch kami ng parang public logistics program. So yung mga tricycle drivers, mga motor, ginawa namin parang Grab, local Grab. Kasi bawal nga lumabas yung mga tao, so hinahatid yung mga gusto nilang bilhin. You start online sales through Facebook, through other social media means. We had a mobile tabuan or market. Iikot yung binibili namin yung produce from one barangay, ibibenta mo sa kabilang barangay. So nagkaroon pa rin ng market access yung mga farmers and fisher folks natin. At yun nga, it's very innovative in the rural settings. So it compensated for the possible magnification ng mga issues that brought about by yung pagbaba ng ating tourism industry.
Okay. And you know the usual challenge, I suppose. Well, this is probably stereotypical, given that you're in Siargao, you're far away from Metro Manila. You know the scope of possibilities may not be big, perhaps. Okay, do you find your current setup more innovative, perhaps? Are you able to really come up with better insights precisely because of because of your current environment right now, or you still feel a little bit challenged, perhaps? Because I mean, the stereotype being that you're there in an island, very far perhaps from the urban hubs.
The challenges would differ from every local government. The island setting is quite different. Again, it depends on your capacity in terms of public service delivery. From health to education to environmental management, there's a lot of factors that you have to consider in terms of understanding the complexity of how you would respond to this pandemic. But one thing for sure is that in every island or in every municipality, every rural area, there's always this sense of coming together. mas madali siyang i-organize kasi it's not too big and people know each other. So when you try to push for innovation in terms of how you again want to deliver specific public services, madali mag-responde ang tao, madali kang magpaintindi, and you try to educate them on these innovations. So yung impact na ma-manage namin because we have that ability to get people together to easily educate them in terms of how we will move as a community.
Okay. You know, what do you do for recreation nowadays? Are you also into sports? I mean, other hobbies perhaps?
Well, surfing's back, so it's pretty cool to be trapped in Siargao because we have surfing. You can do windsurfing, you can do biking, jogging, as long as you follow all the social protocols, the health protocols that our very good IATF team has identified. So safe na safe. So actually, if you could come visit us and endure the 14-day quarantine and all the tests, I guarantee you will have a great time with your family here in Siargao.
Wow. So you actually do surfing yourself?
I used to compete a long time ago.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
mga 30 years yata.
Okay. Although
20 years.
it would be a little bit funny and awkward when you're surfing and you're wearing a surgical mask at the same time, right? I mean,
It's very dangerous. Please don't do it.
okay, you heard that, guys. Don't do it. Okay. Okay. Attorney Barry, you're currently working under the office of the Vice President, and you've been busy supporting our Vice President in her numerous activities as well. And even prior to this, for those of you who are tuned in and may not be aware, Attorney Barry was also part of the Congress sometime in the past. So you've had some experience being a congressman yourself.
Yeah.
So I ask you, I mean, how much has your legislative and legal professional experience helped you in this regard nowadays?
I think that experience in government work, whether it's in the legislature or in the executive, kasi I also served as undersecretary before sa Malacanang, is really a big help if you're going to take on other challenges sa gobyerno. Actually, magkasama kami ni Carlo noon sa Congress, and I'm sure yung experiences niya din as a member of Congress, working on policy, serves him really well ngayon now that he is helping craft our national policy, particularly with respect sa COVID. So, very invaluable yung experience na yan. Obviously, having some degree of background in law also helps. Pero natutuwa nga ako na ma-realize na so many people from Philippine science are actually in government, particularly at this time. Alam naman natin na in the face of this unprecedented global pandemic, a background in science, or at least the perspective and faith in scientific approaches is invaluable. And natutuwa nga ako na si Carlo was there, and I'm even happier to know now that Mayor Francis is on top of the situation in Balanga, and of course si BMJR in Siargao. And I hope that other alumni in other parts of the government, not only in their own spheres, but can also influence yung ganong klaseng perspective. Because I really think that, and this is coming from our own experience, in the many initiatives that we have tried to pursue to support the national government efforts on COVID, we have made it a point to consult mga academics from UP, for example, doctors, etc. I think that that's going to be an invaluable resource. And one thing na walang pagkukulang, madaming magaling na Pilipino. Ang dami talaga nating mga scientists, mga medical experts, data analysts, and I'm sure IATF is actually tapping them sa lahat ng mga ginagawang effort. So, with that, I have every confidence we'll get through this crisis like we've done crisis in the past.
Yeah, and like everybody else, you've been a pretty busy person yourself. So how do you manage some time for downtime, a little bit of rest, perhaps recharging? What do you typically do?
Well, like sinabi ni Sec Carlo kanina, di ba? Being stuck at home gives you some time. Kahit paano. There are Zoom meetings, yes, and sometimes magugulat ka na lang how much of your day is actually consumed sitting in front of a screen, talking to people. But at least you're in the same house as your family. So, even if you can just step out for 5 minutes, makakasama mo yung mga anak mo, ang laking bagay. And of course, nothing beats the sense that your family is safe, particularly in yung time ngayon na everybody is so worried for the health of their loved ones, of their family. So, it's difficult to be in quarantine. I'm sure lahat tayo dito na-alboroto na rin. Tutuwa ka ako. Sana na-stuck na lang ako sa Siargao. Mukhang maganda. Maka-quarantine doon.
We wish we're all in Siargao.
Yeah, but the thing is, being at home, being with your family has its own benefits. And so even if you're busy, even if, like you said, you have to spend a lot of time, attending meetings, taking calls, talking to people remotely. Sa dulo, there will be time for your family. You'll be at home, and there's nothing beats that. Namimiss ko lang yung yung basketball. Kasi hanggang ngayon nag-participate pa kami dun sa interbatch eh. In fact, ang 93 nakampi namin kasi matanda na kami, hindi na kaya ng tuhod namin. So ang team namin for the last few years, 1993, 95 na actually. So magkaka-team kami actually ng Carlo nila Jaya.
Yes,
Pero wala, mukhang this year hindi yata matutuloy.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be a basketball league this year. Yeah, but it's good to know. I mean, for the younger alumni watching this, as you grow older, you tend to have more friends with other batches.
Yeah.
As you form your team. So great. Okay, I mean, thank you all for sharing your current day, so to speak, through the role of a government official or being involved in a government agency is not exactly the mainstream career or ambition of your typical Pisay graduate. You would see a lot of them take serious pursuits in science, in engineering, in technology, especially doing research type of activities. Could you tell us a bit more about your story, your journey, as to how you got involved in such a career? Let's start with you, Secretary Carlo. I mean, could you tell us a little bit more about your background as to why you've decided to go into government and maybe not do career in science, in engineering, and the likes?
Okay. So, sa totoo lang, sinundan ko lang yung kabatch ni Barry. Yung kabatch ni Barry, yung ate ko.
Okay.
Sinundan ko lang siya. Ang real story niyan is, I was really thinking of pursuing going to the medical career. That was what was in my mind. So, nauna na yung ate ko. She was Barry's batchmate, batch 1990. Nauna na siya. And then, I was in Davao. She went to Manila. Then attended Pisay in main campus. Then whenever she'd come home, I'd ask her about it. Sabi niya, enjoy, masaya sa Pisay. So, sabi niya, masaya ang Pisay. So, so ako naman, inisip ko, medical field talaga was what I was thinking of pursuing. So I was fortunate enough to also pass the requirements, the exam for Pisay main campus. So I went. I joined my sister. She was 4th year. I was 1st year. Tapos, nung 4th year tayo, syempre, now you start thinking about, okay, what course will you take? You're gonna start taking the entrance exams sa UP, Ateneo, etc. I felt I could not pursue a medical career kasi I never got over my fear of blood and needles. Hanggang ngayon, takot pa rin ako sa dugo, takot pa rin ako sa injection, so di talaga pwede. So anong next career option? 4th year, di ba? You have to pick your course. So namili ako, pick IE for UP, Management Engineering for Ateneo. That was my choice. Anyway, long story short, I ended up in Ateneo. I took up Management Engineering. After I finished, I worked for a beverage company, a bottling company, to apply what I learned, right? And they put me in quality assurance. While I was working, masaya naman, but I just felt parang wasn't complete. So I ended up going to law school. I went and took the course I thought I promised myself not to take, only because I didn't want to be compared with my dad. I wanted to step out of his shadow and all of that. So ang ending is I went to law school. I enjoyed it, strangely enough. I enjoyed law school. Lahat ng libro na binabasa, lahat ng cases, those voluminous books and case readings and all of that. So I enjoyed it and became a lawyer. I went back to Davao to practice law, but concurrently served as my dad's chief of staff. So one thing led to another. As chief of staff, syempre, you're exposed, and eventually I had to run. I ran after my father finished his term. So I entered Congress, then for 3 consecutive terms, I was fortunate enough to serve. My last term though, I was chair of appropriations. So sabi ko, yes, magagamit ko na lahat ng math na natutunan ko sa Pisay. Apro at budget at numero at lahat. So at least na-apply naman natin. And then before I finished my term, the president appointed me as cabinet secretary. So I took the job, and then here comes this pandemic, wherein na-apply ko rin whatever science, and so napunta rin ako sa medical field, so to speak. Diba? I still ended up where I wanted to be, without the blood and the gore so much, or holding on to blood and gore and injections and needles. But still, bottom line is you never know really where you're gonna end up. But you just pursue it as best as you can. At the end of the day, lahat naman ng learnings mo you'll be able to apply in life.
Okay. That's good. I mean, if I may ask, I mean, when you're doing law, when you were practicing your law profession, did you have any specific specialization in law that you felt that
no. If you
so
practice kasi in Manila, if you practice in Manila, you're forced to specialize. When you practice in the provinces or even in Davao, it's still very much general. So I took in all cases, civil, criminal, or admin, lahat, corporate, everything.
wow, okay.
Yeah. And a lot of pro bono and puro
A lot
abono.
of pro bono. That's good. That's good. Amazing.
Yes.
Great. Oh, what about you naman, Mayor Francis? I mean, what was your journey naman into government life?
Yes, that's a very interesting question and interesting yung answers. I'm sure nating lahat. Ako naman, after graduation from Pisay, I tried to go to the US to study. So I studied computer science in the US, and I graduated from Cornell. Hindi ko na sasabihin yung year kasi mapepeg tayo.
Everybody knows your batch 1992, so they can just do the math, right?
Okay. I guess there's no escaping that. And then after graduation in 1996, I worked in Atlanta for Delta, a company of Delta Airlines as a software engineer. And then after 1 year, I transferred to San Diego to work for Qualcomm Incorporated. And that was a very exciting time for Qualcomm, actually, because that's when they were developing the CDMA technologies, all the technologies behind LTE. Actually, very interesting. Back in 2000, going home, I had, of course, I have a CDMA phone, traveling more than 60 miles per hour through mountains. Hindi nag-drop yung line. So, I guess compared to GSM now, even CDMA back then was a lot better. So, yun, medyo inano pa yung medyo in-advertise pa si Qualcomm. But after, and I was working there for almost more than 6 years. But at some point, you get homesick. All my family is here in the Philippines. So then you realize that you'll have more of an impact here. So I decided to go back, help the family, kasi my dad was the governor back then, and then my brother was in Congress. So I decided to help the family out, and then of course get back to the swing of things in the Philippines. Until kagaya po kay Sec Carlo, little by little you get to know people, you get to know, you get to help with what everyone is doing. And then finally in 2016, I decided to run for mayor after my other brother naman graduated from his 3 terms as mayor of the city of Balanga.
Wow, amazing. So the mayor of Balanga, Bataan is actually a computer scientist, huh, who
Yes.
really earned his stripes in the US, no less. So how has that helped you in governance work? Did you try to, I suppose when it comes to IT infrastructure, for example, you've had a very peculiar perspective about certain things. How has your own work as an IT person helped you in your political role right now?
That's a very good question again. So one of my favorite pet projects, which I started in 2016 with the involvement of the private sector, is what's called the Barangay Learning Hub. So basically in all barangays, we've set up computer facilities where we have modern computers, high-speed internet, sometimes 100 Mbps to 200 Mbps, a printer, and then a facilitator to make sure that the kids, the students who go there, use it for educational purposes. So we've set up more than 16 so far. So here in Balanga, kung sa dyaryo before you'd see, or sa news, you'd see someone studying under the sun sa isang bangketa. Here in Balanga, they go to an air-conditioned barangay learning hub with high-speed internet. That's how they do their homework here in Balanga. So that's one of my pet project. And of course, I've applied my knowledge also. Napakaraming data gathering and analysis na involved with government. So that has played an important role then in all the analysis of data.
Cool. That's pretty amazing. How about you, Vice Mayor JR? I mean, what was your story naman, your background as to how you've gone to government service and, coming from Philippine Science?
So, kagaya ng batchmate ko, unlike pala ng batchmate kong napakagaling, si Sec Carlo, I followed the path of Mayor Francis. Nag-computer science ako sa UP Los Baños. Medyo nag-enjoy masyado. So, was not your really typical student. Medyo nagpakawala ng konti. Bumawi lang ako after I graduated. Got into a good project. I was working in IT. I was working sa Asia Pacific Technical Office ng IBM. So I helped design the ThinkPad series. I was handling quality assurance for the...
So I'll go with my follow-up question na lang kay JR. So how has your experience also as a computer science major helped you in your role as vice mayor now?
I started my career sa public services as a mayor in 2010. I served for 3 terms already. It was during that time that we started to introduce massive reforms in terms of public service delivery, from public health to education to environmental management, mangrove management, fishery. Lahat yan. Ang bottom line kasi nung platform namin was science-based governance. So, pisay na pisay yung dating nun. The science-based governance makes you want to focus on data. So, data muna. You have to have the data to understand your baseline, then to set your targets so that you would understand the necessary outcomes of how to get to that level. So despite being a small town in a remote area, We were able to do that because there was science in the process, technologies that supported our desire to achieve that outcome. So not necessarily high-tech science or high-tech technologies, but definitely yung process of how to get to that level, yun yung nadala ko na mula noon hanggang ngayon. So sa awa ng Diyos, we were able to address poverty. We were pre-COVID, we dropped poverty by almost 20%, employed more than half of the unemployed. So malaking opportunity yung na-create namin, created industries, ecotourism, because we were growing as a tourism hotspot. But with the science, kami yung nagpauso ng mga nagpapahinga ng tourism spot. So even before the president declared closure of Boracay, we would close our tourism hotspots for a month, just to make sure that nature can recover. So we did community-based because based on science, we saw the data that if we do community-based, the impact would be 1,000-fold. So true enough, we employed 1,000 families because of a simple concept of tourism-based industries. So malaking naitulong yung the way how you think, the way how you package things, yung process, systems thinking, lahat yan, napoporma yan ng high school. So malaking bagay talaga yung nadala from Pisay, tapos nag-science na background ka nung college, tapos yun, dala mo ngayon the way you would operate things.
Cool. Attorney Barry, how about you? What's your story as to how you started being involved in government service?
Actually, to be perfectly honest, I didn't expect that this is where I would be. When I first actually entered college, pumasok ako sa UP Diliman, economics ang kinuha ko. Pinapayagan pa kami noon eh. Nakumuha. Kahit kasi graduate ka. And then after I graduated in 94, alam ba yun, yung typical 20-year-old na hindi mo alam kung ano gagawin mo sa buhay mo. But one of the things na I always found comfort in is gusto ko mag-aaral kasi parang gusto ko yung environment ng university. So ang choices were going to law school or taking up a graduate studies program. Diba? And dahil pumasa ako sa LAE, why not, di ba? Give it a try. And like si Carlo, I suppose, nagustuhan ko, di ba? Yun eh. One odd thing na about law is having a background particularly in mathematics, 'di ba? Helps you a lot eh. 'Di ba yung sequence of reasoning, 'di ba? Yung getting from point A to point B, that helps a lot eh dun sa paano mag-isip legally. So I suppose that's one of the reasons ba't ko na-enjoy. When I graduated from law school, typical na naman, di ba? Parang di mo alam ang gagawin mo. So yeah, i-recruit ang mga law firms. Sige, law firm ako. But after 6 months in a big law firm, na-realize ko it's not really for me. Mas masaya. I wasn't really happy, serving yung mga clients na may pera, corporate. Feeling ko, siguro dahil medyo may pag-activista rin ako nung nasa UP ako, di ba? Chair ng student council, mga ganung mga bagay-bagay. So, meron kang, kahit paano, merong scholar ng bayan na maglingkod ka sa sambayan ng team. But, at that point, malayong-malayo sa akin yung mag-gobyerno. So, instead, I left yung law firm and I went to work for a legal NGO. So very similar. Kaya ka tumatawa ko kanina, nagkukwento si Carlo about pro bono kasi ganun na ganun yung legal NGO. Kung hindi ka man, kung babayaran ka manok, ganyan. So kaya isda. Yung mga ganun. Kasi pero very fulfilling yung work. Nakakatuwa. I was a lot happier. And then I got the opportunity na magturo. I was recruited to teach sa UP College of Law. And I took it, and very fulfilling din yung magturo. While I was teaching, I got the chance to take my master's in law sa NYU. And when I got back, alam mo yun, ang feeling ko talaga tutuloy-tuloy na ako sa academia. Kasi 'di ba? Yun na yung route. But this was the time when dami ring nangyayari sa bansa natin. And, at that time, UP, well, it's like it's always been, mapakialam eh. Diba? So nasama ako dun sa mga nagko-comment kayo on things, file kayo ng mga kaso sa Supreme Court, ganyan. And I suppose, one thing led to another, and eventually, nung nagkaroon ng opportunity, I was actually asked to serve sa gobyerno. And I took that. Eventually, that translated into an opportunity to run for Congress. And noong 2016, after si VP Lenny, who Carlo and I were with together sa House ng 16th Congress, asked me to help her sa team niya. Of course, I said yes. Diba? Nung panahon yun. So, parang you start out with no clear idea where you want to go. At certain points in your life, tingin mo, ito ang gagawin ko. And then, opportunities arise. And I suppose, you end up in the places you're meant to be. At wala naman sayang eh. Walang tapon. Sabi nga ni JR, sabi din ni Francis kanina, and si Carlo, di ba? We might not have ended up, literally as, researchers, di ba, in a scientific institution. Or, may PhD at nagtuturo sa some prestigious scientific university. But definitely, yung natutunan namin sa Pisay, what that gave us, I think at the minimum, yung appreciation for the scientific way of thinking, I think, has been a big help to sa ginagawa namin ngayon. And I think that it's indispensable sa mga nagtatrabaho sa gobyerno. In fact, if more people who are scientists or with a science background can go into public service, tingin ko it's going to be a good thing for our country.
Okay. I mean, it's quite evident that your concern, your passion for society, for community at large is there, right? I mean, where do you draw the strength, the energy to really push forward with a lot of the initiatives, the advocacies that you've had? It's pretty daunting, especially I guess if you're somebody who's pretty active, pretty like a go-getter type. Oh yeah, I want to help others. Where do you find the strength and where do you find the energy and the motivation to really push forward, to eventually reach that current position you're in right now?
Ito may kukwento ko kasi ito directly relates dun sa Pisay experience. Nung baccalaureate mass namin. Kasi di ba may baccalaureate mass tayo, di ba? Prior to yung actual graduation. Ang naging speaker namin, si Obet Bersola, who just recently passed away a couple of months ago. Siya yung salutatorian nung first batch ng Pisay, yung pioneering batch ng Pisay. And he talked about his own experiences during yung speech niya doon. And one of the things I never forgot na sinabi niya, when he graduated from Pisay, ang feeling niya, yung preparation na binigay sa kanya, yung training, it's as if meron siyang red carpet in front of him, diba? Leading to whatever path he would choose to take in his life. But then when he looked closer, na-realize niya na yung red carpet na yun were actually the backs of yung mga Filipino people whose contributions made yung education niya possible. And nung sinabi niya, sobrang tumatak sa akin yun eh. Kasi ultimately, pag, diba, science scholar ka, and I'm sure lahat tong tatlong kasama ko sa panel and everybody else na naging graduate ng Pisay, that's something na talagang bibit-bitin mo sa buhay mo. You know that you wouldn't be the person you are. You wouldn't have the opportunities you've been fortunate enough to have if not for the fact na pinag-aral ka ng mga tao, diba? So, kahit paano, you will find some way of giving back. Well, kaming apat dito, we went into public service. We are serving in government. We're doing it that way. But I'm sure, diba, there are thousands of other graduates who feel that and they give back in other ways by working in the private sector, contributing to the economy or teaching, diba, or advancing the threshold of science and research. So that's where I get ako personally. That's where I get my inspiration and strength from. Hindi madali, but sa dulo, tingin ko, nakaramdaman mo yun eh. Makaramdaman mo yun. Kahit paano, di ba? I'm sure si JR, si Francis, si Carlo can all attest to that fact that at the end of the day, di ba, yung pagod mo mawawala. Alam mo na sa araw na ito, meron akong nagawa. di ba? Para makatulong, makaambag kahit papaano. At di ba? Makapag-give back, di ba? Doon sa bayan na ito.
Wow. So if you think about it, the seeds of the inspiration that led you to be involved in government service was actually from a fellow Pisay alumnus, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
yeah, and we're hoping that this episode and the program that the National Alumni Association is doing would also have that magnifying effect for our other alumni as well, and for the students, the current students in all of the 16 campuses that we have right now for Philippine Science. Hey, maybe okay, we've talked about it for 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 some time, and we've actually asked this question from our previous episode with Doc Eric and Doc Edsel. The question being is, how much has your formative years in Pisay prepared you for your roles in government? Who'd like to go first? So do we go? Or maybe let's start with Attorney Barry naman. Para
I think, as I said before, I think it's helped a lot. Yung being able to think logically, I think, is very helpful. Yung learning how to respect expertise, learning how to appreciate evidence-based reasoning. Tingin ko lahat yan magagamit mo anumang field ng pasukin mo. And that's really something you get from Pisay. And gaya nga lang nabanggit ko kanina, yung the fact that you are a scholar, ganun ka palang kabata, and you're made aware that kaya kayo nag-aaral dito kasi at some point we expect that you guys should give back. Kayo yung kayo yung may talent, kayo yung cream of the crop. Kinuha namin kayo and we giving you this opportunity because we want you to give back. Ako tingin ko ang laking factor na that allows you to get through the difficulties, yung frustrations minsan that you have to confront in public service. I'm sure sila JR, sila Carlo, sila Mayor Francie have their own stories on this. Pero talagang may mga araw na ang hirap maka-get through. But sa dulo, yun ang panghahawakan. And I cannot overemphasize how important yung grounding na yun habang high school ko pa lang is, 'di ba? When you actually get to yung work, particularly the hard, sometimes frustrating part of the work.
Okay, good. What about you, Mayor Francis? I mean, how has Pisay helped you in working with government right now?
Everyone has said earlier, of course, yung scientific thinking, evidence-based thinking, and all of that has helped. Also, yung kahit paano the engineering background, paying attention to all the details. Kasi sometimes the key whether project would work or not comes down to the very smallest details to make it work. Gusto ko rin sabihin, one of the perks of being a Pisay graduate is around 1/3 to 1/2, meron ba tayong studies of your batchmates are doctors. So kapag may health question kayo or you're a family member, you have so many people to ask from your batch and from your other batches. Or kung di nila kilala, they refer someone from another batch. During this pandemic, I've messaged Dr. Edsel a number of times asking for advice, questions, and right away he answers. So napakalaking resource po yung being Pisay graduate, yung having all these doctors. And also I want to thank all our Pisay doctors and of course all our health frontliners during this pandemic. Talagang sila po yung nasa frontline and talagang sila po yung nagsasave sa ating lahat. So thank you to all of them also.
Okay. Vice Mayor JR, anything you'd like to share in that regard? How has Pisay helped you in your role in government right now?
Actually, malaki from my end because I come from a small town. To be able to make it to the 1,500 other towns trying to get the attention of Malacanang yung credibility mo being a Pisay graduate helps a lot. Kasi kung pwede pang iuna yan, unahin mo na yan eh. Nag-Pisay ka, nag-UP ka, kung ano man yung ranking mo nun, wala nang pakialam yung mga tao eh. It is the credibility na you can think systematically na parang meron ka kaagad na parang resume na pag ito kausap natin mukhang mabubuo yung gusto kong mangyari. The budgets might be executed more than it should be. So meron sila kaagad na perception, and of course you have to prove that. And when you do, you earn more, you become more credible, and thereby you can get more support from different funding agencies, including international funding agencies. So, yun yung naging naging pathway. Ginamit ko talaga yung Pisay na brand to get through the different funding donors, national, local, hanggang international. Tapos sinabayan pa ng Siargao. So, yun, naging maganda. We were able to, again, transform our small town. Dati, unknown kami. Ngayon, if you ask about local governance and especially on environmental governance and climate change adaptation, nandun kami sa mga parang top tier na mga local governments that can respond effectively.
Secretary Carlo, anything to share or add to the conversation?
Well, maliban din sa mga nasabi ng mga kasamahan ko dito, the scientific method, diba? That's really very important. But more than that, I think it's really the discipline. Sipin mo, at a young age, first year high school, that time wala akong grade 7. Diretso na, di ba? Grade 6, diretso na. Then for 4 years, how many countless hours reading, memorizing, nagpupuyat ka. High school while other high school boys and girls were having fun, going out or whatever. Tayo, we were just studying and studying and studying, memorizing and everything. So the discipline really and the perseverance. And that really helps you, in life, when you go out there, when you graduate and you start working, especially in government. And I'm sure in all fields, you'll be faced with so many problems, challenges, obstacles, and frustrations. And you really need to persevere, really. And yung being able to survive Pisay, that's a skill in itself. And it really teaches you how to survive in real life. Na ka talaga ng paraan na mag-survive ka, na hindi ka makikick out, na hindi ka masisipa. Bumagsak ka dito, kailangan mong bumawi, kailangan hanapan mo ng paraan na you make up for your grades. So, even when you commit mistakes, you just have to rise above them, diba? And these are the things that, books won't really teach you, but the experience of Pisay itself, hindi mo alam, it's just behind you, it's just the back of your head, everything that you learned in 4 years. And now with K-12, I can't even imagine how the kids now do 6 years of Pisay. I mean, my hat's off to them. Kudo ako sa inyo. But 6 years of Pisay and 4 years of Pisay, whatever it is, lahat yan nandyan. And then, talking about frustration and perseverance, scientists like us, we'll never give up. You have a problem, you find the solution, you hypothesize, you test it, you collect data, you find a solution. If it doesn't work, try again. Hanap ka na ng iba. So that discipline, that scientific method will just really help you along in life, in general. And in a career in government service, I guess it has been put to good use. And I agree completely with Barry. I think if we fill up government with more Pisay graduates, I think we'll be in a good place.
Okay. This was something that you've already alluded to earlier in some of the questions. And I suppose it's well known that the three of you, Mayor Francis, Vice Mayor JR, Secretary Carlo, that the three of you have actually come from families who have been public servants for quite a long time. Was there any pressure from your own families to actually pursue government work? Maybe let's start with Mayor Francis.
I talked about it a little before. No, it's more of just being part of the experience. I think when being even grade 6 or grade 7, going to the political rallies, and then getting older, helping with my dad back then, and then with my brothers. It's more of you get to know the people, and then you get to know the service that they're able to do for all the people, and that kind of nudges you na rin to think na maybe I can bring something to the table, being a Pisay graduate, from my experience that will help a lot of people. And you realize as a mayor or as a congressman or other government service that there's so much that you're able to do, that you're able to bring to the table to improve the lives of people. So I guess the short answer, there of course there's some nudging, but in the end it's up to you. And if you realize that you can give a lot, that you can accomplish a lot, that you can help a lot of people, then that's really the decision maker that makes you get into government service.
Yeah. Vice Mayor JR?
My case, wala naman. Just so happened for my first term as mayor then, 2009, bigla na akong natawagan na tumakbo. Filing na. Parang feeler lang. Feeler lang. Yung, wala na kaming maisip, ikaw na lang muna. Hindi ko alam ba't ako umuo eh. Umuo naman ako. Tapos, uwi ng probinsya kasi taga dito talaga. Pag uwi dito, nag-file lang, tapos umalis. Kasi ang filing mo is October. Tapos you campaign the following year. So I came back, campaign period na. The following year. Eh nanalo. Sumamba, nanalo. So yun, inayos naman natin yung first term. Then there was an opportunity na parang to continue. There was really strong support from the people. They saw the changes we were doing even in our first 3 years. Then it led to another 3 years. Okay. Then now, been on my 10th year in public service. So parang ito na, we've been doing a lot of changes. We're influencing the whole island. Siargao has 9 municipalities. The province in terms of policy and governance. And in fact, given our example and our success stories, we're also influencing international communities na that has similar setup as Siargao as an island community. So islands in the Pacific, we're working with them in the Caribbean of how to respond to, let's say, again, in climate changes, environmental management, public health. So things that we have done in the Philippines, in our small town, is now getting recognition elsewhere. So it's all attributed to yun nga, not just your families nudging to pursue public service, but the influence that you see because of your background coming from a science-based organization from when you're 12 years old. Sabi ni Sir Carlo, imagine 12 years old, so you have this perseverance of how to address, become very scientific, you never give up. So lahat yun nadala-dala. Kaya nagtuloy-tuloy. Kasi yung first naman, it's a nudge. Pero yung pagtuloy-tuloy mo, decision mo na yun normally. Because you see now that, yun, sabi ni Mayor Francis, there's this opportunity to serve. Tapos nakita mo, marami kang natutulungan. Yung impact malaki. Not only for your small town, but the way they would start listening to you when you say something. It helps why you stay. Yun, the first step was the family helped out really also.
And what about you, Secretary Carlo?
Ako, walang prodding from my dad, or anybody in the family. But gaya ng sinabi ni Mayor Francis, exposed ka kasi. You're exposed to what they do. Like early in my dad's career, political career, yung opisina was the house. So necessarily lahat ng mga tao na humingi ng tulong, nangailangan ng tulong, pupunta sa bahay. So as a young child, I got exposed to that early on. Bababa ako sa bahay, ano pa ako, pambahay lahat, nandun yung lahat ng mga tao. Tapos nakikipag-usap ka sa kanila, you find out itong mga problema nila, nag-share sila, magpapatulong sa ganyan. So exposed ka sa ganun. But personally, for my dad's part, wala. There was really no pressure. You go to Pisay, okay. Take ME, okay. Wala. You go to law, don't go to law. Bahala ka. Wala. Kung saan ka masaya. So it was just really, I guess the Pisay I said, you see a problem, you have a hypothesis, right? You're thinking, I know the solution to this problem. I want to test it, di ba? Meron akong mga ideas na gusto kong subukan eh. So yun, I guess that was yung umujok na I know the problem, I know there's a solution, there's a long-term solution to this. There's a short-term, medium-term, long-term solution. Itong short-term, itong medium-term. Tapos, it's government service where you can really apply it at at a very influential level. So yun. So it's me who asked if I could eventually, and then the family just got behind me.
Well, it's been a very, very lively, very exciting session today. But before we close, I'd like to ask each one of you, what would you like to say to those perhaps who are interested to pursue a career or vocation, maybe first in science and technology, or maybe in government, especially the youth of today? What would you like to say to them, or what advice would you like to give to them? Let's start with Attorney Barry.
Ako, diba? Follow your heart and persevere. I mean, if you feel na this is something for you, if you feel that this is where your passion lies, it might seem like a distant goal from where you're standing. But if you really want to do it, then you just have to work at it. But that said, also be open to the opportunities that life will drop your way. Kasi gaya nga ng marami sa amin dito, we didn't have a clear plan at the start, diba? You were just studying, and then you thought you wanted to go this way or that way. But ultimately, just be open, and you'll end up where you're needed, and hindi mo sasayang kung ano man yung napag-aralan mo, particularly kung Pisay ka galing.
Vice Mayor JR?
For me, to all na bata, pursue really a career in science and tech as a base. Just to make sure you have the right discipline, as said by Carlo, the right yung heart mo, yung desire, it will come into play later on. Pero importante yung base mo solid. So wherever your career will take you, your life goals will take you, importante yung base mo, yung matibay, may tama kang disiplina. So I would really encourage the youth of today to really pursue science and technology. It's a base career. Then later on, if you decide to go into public service, you're most welcome, and the government really needs you.
Okay, Mayor Francis, what about you? Any last words, parting words?
For me, I always tell the students and the young generation of today that they're so lucky kasi during our time in high school, there was no internet yet. To get research ideas, you have to, go to some building in UP or to the library. Now, everything's at your fingertips. You can learn everything about math by doing Khan Academy, for example. So, and there's so many technologies right now. There's AI, sa biology pa lang, there's CRISPR. In terms of this pandemic, actually, it's science that's gonna solve this pandemic with a vaccine. So, to the young people for today, there's so many exciting opportunities in science and technology. And kagaya ng nasabi, it serves as a very good base as well. So you really can't go wrong.
Lastly, Secretary Carlo, any parting words or advice to the youth of today?
Yeah, yes. Anyway, since we're talking about new normal now, and what this pandemic has actually taught us is that we need more scientists. We need more people in science, in research, in technology, in medicine, technology, and the like. So if you're thinking about a career, take the STEM track because, like what all of us are saying, at the very least, you don't know naman where life's gonna take you. But if you take a STEM track, it will open up many opportunities for you. You can go anywhere as long as, gaya ng sinabi ni Mayor J, nandyan yung pinaka-foundation mo is STEM. And then after that, bahala na. Wherever life you can go anywhere with the STEM track. No? Of course, if you're a Pisay graduate, you may think that you're limited to certain courses. That's fine. But even in college, let me tell you, you never know. The course you take in college, you may or may not apply work later on. I mean, you'll apply everything. I mean, you'll apply naman whatever you learn in college. But what I mean is, what course you take doesn't necessarily translate to the career path that you will eventually follow. So it doesn't matter if you take a STEM track, you go to Pisay, a course that is accredited by Pisay, that's fine. At the end of the day, whatever course it is, nandun yung discipline of science, technology, the scientific method. And, life will open up the opportunities at the right time. And if eventually turn into a scientist, medical practitioner, an epidemiologist, whatever, know that in the new normal, we need more of. And finally, stay in the Philippines, work in the Philippines, work for the Filipino people.
Great. Thank you very much, Secretary Carlo, Mayor Francis, Vice Mayor JR, and Attorney Barry for spending your time with us. If you're a Pisay alumnus or alumna, please go to pshsnaa.org for activation of membership. I repeat, that's pshsnaa.org. This has been Pisay Talks and Webinars by the Philippine Science High School National Alumni Association. Once again, I'm Chippy Buenafe, Batch 1997 Main Campus, and thanks for tuning in.